Club podcast all up in your ear. Talking all that good you wanna hear. Stogies, bourbons, and everything in between. Griff and Pugh are not experts by any means, so sit back and light one up. Make sure you got something good in your cup. Happy smoking, now enjoy the program. Thank you for being part of the Cigar Club fam.
What's going on, Cigar Club family? Welcome back to another episode of the Cigar Club podcast. I'm Pugh, and along with me, as always, is Griff Howie. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening every week, as well as leaving your thoughts and feedback below on each episode. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to the Cigar Club family and welcome to the Cigar Club podcast. This is where we talk about all things cigars with you, the Cigar Club family, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. On today's episode, we have a very special guest to talk to us about a project that we worked on several months ago, and we'll be live when this episode comes out. But before we jump into that, Griff, how you doing? What are we smoking today? What's going on? You drinking anything?
Diet DP and Bosphorus, baby. Diet Dr. Pepper, fantastic pairing. I got way too drunk on Friday night, so I'm not drinking anything still, and I don't think I'm going to drink this week. I say that, and I'll crack a beer tonight, but yeah, St. Patrick's Day was a little bit rougher than I was expecting. Believe it or not, car bombs and tequila sodas don't go together.
You know, who would have thought?
Tequila soda was the drink of the night, and then they're like, oh, car bombs. I'm like, nah, it's not going to be pretty. And then peer pressure and
can't say no. And
3 car bombs later and more tequila. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Saturday was a complete failure, but so
proud.
All that saying, Diet Dr. Pepper and Bosphorus and first cigar of the day. Very excited.
Same here. Yep, we've got the latest Cigar Club exclusive with Ozgener Family Cigars. We've got the Bosphorus box pressed Corona Extra. This is a 5.6 by 48 out of Nicaragua, featuring an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, Ecuadorian Connecticut, and Nicaraguan Jalapa binder, as well as Nicaraguan filler. This cigar is super exciting, and we'll bring Tim, who is our special guest today. We'll bring him in just a moment to talk more about Ozgener Family Cigars. We've had a lot of his cigars, or we've had the Bosphorus in the box before. And when we got that cigar, we smoked it at PCA, I believe, right? Back in 2022.
Yeah,
I believe that's the...
I think we did. I think we did.
That's the first time we smoked it. And shortly after we smoked that, I think we were talking about how much we would love this in a Corona Extra, one of our favorite sizes. I don't think I've ever had a Corona Extra box press before. And so this is really, really exciting to have this. I love the feel of it. Super sharp box press, tighter than really most other box presses that I've smoked before. And I really like it. Love the draw on it. Love the size of it.
It is fantastic.
But let's bring Tim in here in just a second. Before we do, though, I wanted to let everyone know that we do have some Cigar Club Black spots live available for you now. There are limited, only a few left. So if you're looking to join us on that subscription, you've got your chance now. They will go quickly, but let's bring in the man of the hour, Tim Ozgener from Ozgener Family Cigars. Tim, thank you for joining us. How are you? How have things been over there?
Good. Thanks for having me on. See, I don't know. I mean, do you want me to call you like Pugh and Griff? Is that the MO?
Yeah.
We'll answer to anything, really.
We'll answer anything. That is true, too.
Tweedledee, tweedledum, whatever.
Well, I mean, because sometimes you guys are, you've been doing this a lot, so it might be something that you guys only call one another. So I want to be politically correct here. So yeah, no, it's been going good. I mean, look, I'm very excited about the cigar and the blend and the cigar line and the story behind it. And yeah, I've been going around and traveling quite a bit and doing a lot of events, kind of promoting it and getting people to try it, because I think once they try it, then they'll get a sense of the quality, because I think it's a world-class cigar and world-class blend.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, it's an amazing cigar to have be the reintroduction of for you back into the world of tobacco. And I mean, what a home run to start off with. For everyone that doesn't know, you've been in the cigar tobacco industry for quite a long time, and have recently come back, essentially. But for anyone that maybe doesn't know, what is the history of Tim and Ozgener Cigars as well?
Well, I mean, I grew up, honestly, like in the business because my father started, his initials are CAO. So, and how that started initially was with pipes. meerschaum pipes from Turkey, because my father was Turkish. He loved smoking these. Meerschaum is basically these small little kind of crustacean minerals that have, that have formed into, a mineral stone that you put into water. It's very highly absorbent. It absorbs the water of the stone, becomes heavier, and then you can carve any face into it and you dry it. And then when you put tobacco in it, it absorbs the tar and the nicotine. It feels like soft, it feels like cool in your mouth, and it starts changing color on you, like turning like honey, brown, black. My dad was an engineer. He didn't like the engineering of how the stem fit into the shank of the pipe. He thought it would like put too much pressure, the friction, and cause the shank to break. So I will invent my own stem while I will twist in, twist out, good engineering. So he did that himself. And then people started calling our house saying, hey, we heard you had an improved engineering of the stem. Can you put your initials in the shank of the pipe? And so he's like, what am I to do? And so he went to the warehouse. He went to the hardware store and he got himself a drill bit and he just drilled his initial CAO in the stem of the pipe. And that's how we got the name CAO. And then we became really well known for having the highest quality meerschaum pipe in the world. And then we went from that was sick in 1968. In 1978, he started that part-time, and then he got into it full-time 10 years later in 78. And then in 1990, we got into making humidors. So we applied the engineering kind of know-how and taught woodworkers in Nashville, where we are now, how to make solid wood humidors. We put made in the USA with American flag on it, which was always had great meaning for my family. And we became more of a humidor company. And then in 94, you're going to the same conventions where you're selling pipes and humidors and cigars to the same retailers. So we made friends with cigar manufacturers who had factories. And so our first cigar was made in 1994 underneath the CAO label, initially by Nestor Plasencia. And then we kind of built the brand from there. I mean, from between 1994 to 1998, our cigars weren't setting the world on fire, because this was when the cigar boom happened. And all of a sudden you're getting the boxes were supposed to be, let's say that our first cigar was supposed to look chestnut brown. One box would be chestnut brown. The next box, same blend, would be green. So there was no consistency because the demand was so high.
Yeah.
But when we really hit it in 1998, we got a CAO Anniversary Maduro. That cigar got a big ratings for us in Cigar Aficionado. And then from 98 to 2007, we really had a intense growth period. And then in 2007, Scandinavian Tobacco Group came and acquired us. We weren't looking to sell the business at all. We were having a lot of fun. It was part of who we were. It was our baby. But there was a lot of legislative threats on cigars at the time. And we thought that it might be kind of wisest not to have all of the family's eggs in that basket, especially if you're getting, who knew?
Right, yeah, the future
like,
was uncertain.
Yeah, and right after that, then S-chip hit, which increased excise taxes on cigars. So, but then like after that, I remained with Scandinavian Tobacco Group until 2010, 2011. They merged with General, and they had like big offices in Richmond. And I figured that was a good time for me to kind of leave. And we converted our warehouse into a contemporary arts center that's a nonprofit, bringing avant-garde arts to Nashville, and also bringing them to kids and school children that have had their arts programming cut, because we always felt it was important for kids to, be exposed to creativity at an early age. It helps them whether they become artists or whether they become accountants. So that kind of gives you a little of the history.
I've heard this story before. But when you do your father's impression, it's classic.
Well, that was a really easy one for me to do.
That's a layup.
He was my best friend and mentor. So I mean, and he was great to work with. I mean, he wasn't easy a lot of times to work with, but he was a great man and a great thinker, and also he instilled in us like when we're out there and you commit to something, we commit 100%. We work very hard. We try to make it so that we understand that people's hard-earned dollars go into every single stick. So you want to make every single stick perform great. But it's like, to be honest with you, it's kind of, it might be a little bit of a cliche, but it's a bit like a symphony how this works. You know, you've got to have other partners in different kind of aspects, including you guys. You know, what you guys do, and I received in the mail the packet that you all are sending out. I mean, it's really well done, really, really well executed, really beautiful. I mean, I can tell that you guys, you know, also, the devil is in the details if you want to do things really well, I feel. Yeah. So we try to apply that to like every aspect of the cigar so that we want to make sure that they perform consistently. So your partnerships on who you're working with is important.
Thank you for those words. I think the first thing I noticed, what was the size we smoked at PCA? It was the
50.
Yeah. Phenomenal size.
That was a 4-inch by 50.
Yeah.
We just call the B50, meaning it just stands for Bosphorus 50 ring gauge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we shipped that not too long ago. But the second I saw that cigar was the first time for me at PCA.
This one.
Yes, exactly.
Great size.
Yeah.
This band, I think, has probably got to be the most robust imagery. And I know there's a lot to be said. I know there's a lot of meaning behind it. And a lot of storytelling behind it. Can you go into some of the detail? I don't know how you... Anyway, maybe you take it from there.
No. I mean, listen, I feel comfortable talking with you guys about this in particular because it's clear to me that you guys are also very mindful about what you're putting out there for the consumers' eyes to see and what information you want them to glean from whatever it is that you're promoting that month. You know, so you know, when you start a new brand, after you build kind of a brand like CAO from nothing to something and then to be an international brand, you want to be really kind of, I think, mindful and careful about what you're putting out there, and you want it to be as authentic and truthful to who you are as possible. So I was lucky in that I made friends with a guy who was a product designer for Nike and then Google. In fact, Google hired him to be their chief designer. And he helped us with our Arts Center identity. And I noticed him because he won an international award from Esquire magazine to redesign their logo. I reached out to him without him knowing me, and he helped us with our Oz Arts design for the Arts Center. Mm-hmm. And so then when we started this exercise of building a brand, you know, we started from like, who are you? What's important to you? What are your morals and values and ethics? And for me, I'm such a, you know, family is really important to me. So I started with my family and who are we and stuff. And it ended up where we had like 4 concentric circles, and the values were kind of, you know, the flavor, the ingredients that go behind it, you know, the details of excellence and how they're made and the attention to detail. You know, and then I remember, and there was another, it might've been like ingredients, flavor, construction. And then the last one was good humor. But by good humor, you know, we like to crack a lot of jokes and laugh a lot, and I do a lot of impressions in this. But it also has to do with like, when you're smoking a cigar, you're more relaxed, the temperature goes down, and you can really kind of connect with other people. So it has to do with like also who are you spending your time with and how are you connecting with them. And cigars are a great vehicle to do that. So when it came to like the packaging design, you know, we were sort of like, well, you know, my father was Armenian, and Armenians are like very kind of hardworking, enterprising, creative business people who always are into like, you know, customer service, you know, pleasing people and delivering. You know, my mother's Turkish, so this is Istanbul, and my father was born and raised in Istanbul as an Armenian. But, you know, and my mother was really into kind of education and early childhood development and the importance of, like I was describing earlier, bringing arts and creativity to young kids when they're 0 to 5, because if they're doing things creative, that helps them with being innovative thinkers and complex problem solving, which everybody has to deal with no matter what business you're in. Mm-hmm. And then they met in New York. You know, my mother was a Fulbright scholar at Bank Street College of Education. My dad was getting his engineering degree at Columbia. They met there, and they got married, and they eloped to Tennessee. And then in the middle, there's a boat here, which kind of represents, you know, a journey that somebody in our families have taken to come to this country. And, we always believe that United States is the best country in the world. It gives you like so many opportunities. If you have, if you have the right ethics, morals, values, and you're willing to work hard, then you can create a good life for yourself over here, as opposed to other places where it might be more restrictive. So the brand is about, if a Turk and Armenian can get along and be married for 55 years, we can all get along over a cigar.
When you shared that story with us at PCA, I was immediately just drawn to you, the cigar, the story behind it. You shared the story of the pie synesthesia as well, which we shipped out, back a while ago. One of my favorite things to do is to share those stories, and whether it's a story behind a brand or a cigar, or even just the imagery behind the box, things like that are truly special, and really just kind of take that cigar to the next level for me when you have that understanding of what went behind it or the thought process be in it. It's just truly amazing.
Well, you guys understand it well too, because you all are storytellers, right? So I think there's a commonality amongst, like, whether you're talking about cigars or bourbon or wine or a lot of these affordable luxury categories, that the people like to hear the story behind these brands. They just do. Yeah. I mean, no matter what category it is. So, I know that. So that being the case, people ask me anyway about my last name and what's the story. And so I've ended up telling this story over and over and over again. And people have reacted to it saying, wow, that's a really unusual circumstance that you have, because Turkey and Armenia have had a very kind of controversial relationship with one another, even though there are a lot of common threads that tie those two cultures together. Thinking about the food, their approach to doing business, their approach to kind of customer service, certainly, so the region of the world. So I thought it was like kind of an interesting kind of place to start, that, here's a real life example, especially in these times when you have so much kind of political kind of differences and division within our country, that I felt like my parents were like a really kind of authentic and true example about two people that overcame some of these things and found things that they had more in common than these other things that were cultural that may have told them to not get along, because I think at the end of the day, what ties us together is our humanity, so I think, and also, so I think it's important that we kind of continue to focus on that, as opposed to some of these external kind of things swirling around us. And certainly cigars are an amazing product that help people kind of connect with one another. It's really like they're almost like a peace pipe, cigars.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, Griff and I have talked about one of my on the podcast before. One of our favorite things is to go into a lounge and you sit down and you immediately have an icebreaker that you can talk to anyone there. It's hey, what are you smoking? And from there, the topics will go into any direction. But it's so easy to talk to someone in a cigar lounge because, like you said, it's a peace pipe. And you're all there for a common hobby of smoking a cigar, and it's relaxed, it's fun, it's engaging, it's inviting. I mean, I've been invited to so many, groups of people at a brick and mortar that maybe I've never gone to, or a lounge that I've never gone to, and there's 5-6 guys sitting there, and you sit down and you immediately feel included because, it's just, you're another one of the guys there or gals there. And that's one of my favorite things there. That's especially initially when I started smoking cigars, it was so easy to just be involved in the community and hang out and meet different people wherever you're at.
But I think that what you guys do also is important because you're giving people an opportunity. You have a vehicle where you can kind of continue to educate people on cigars and nuances of the cigars, because at the end of the day, especially when you get into more of a what's the difference between cigar X versus cigar Y, there's a lot of nuance that goes into that. And a lot of the nuance has a connectivity with the microclimate and where it's grown and one thing that I think that the wine industry has done well, that it shows me when you look outside of like your kind of box where you are, what are other categories doing that we can learn from? And certainly with like wine, when I've gone to a bunch of these kind of wine tastings, almost the first thing they talk about is like the soil, what's in the soil, how that gets translated through the vine into the grape, the microclimate difference. And I mean, a lot of that is also applicable and similarly true in cigars. It's just they're a bit ahead of us, I think, in how they kind of communicate that. And we'll get there, right? But I mean, it's just interesting to consider that for a moment. So I think that, I don't know,
I could not agree more. I've made that exact same comparison to the wine industry of kind of my expectations and hopes and wants and desires of where the cigar industry goes. I think, granted, I was just a kid then and I wasn't smoking cigars in the 90s, but I feel like a drastic difference between the 90s cigar boom and the cigar boom that we're having now is consumers want to know more. They don't want just another good cigar. They want to know what they're smoking. They want to know about the brand, about the blender, the people behind the scenes as well. So I think the customer base is much more engaged now than ever before and wanting more than just any old cigar that's a great cigar. They want to be involved in the process. And I've looked at the wine industry as that kind of example of, you get down to the exact varietal of grape that was used in that wine for some of these companies and the genetic mutation, the family and genius of that grape and really know it from soil to bottle and what's actually in it. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that transparency in the cigar industry from manufacturers and Griff and I try to do that as much as possible, but it's really cool to see and hear you make that comparison as well. And kind of using the wine
analogy. Yeah. No, I think that you're right. But I will say this, honestly, is that someone else asked me, what have you noticed? Because, I mean, this is, I'd been away from the industry, like really kind of directly. I'd been like kind of indirectly behind the scenes. But I mean, but someone asked me, what have you noticed being away for, a little over 10 years? And honestly, one thing that I've noticed is that the cigar consumer has become much more knowledgeable and educated on cigars. Yeah, you have to say that it's, due to, the information that's like, more easily accessible for them vis-a-vis the internet, but also like with the efforts of like what you guys do as an example, all of those little things in aggregate help with people becoming more educated. So for example, like 13 years ago, if I said the components of, let's say, this cigar have fillers from Esteli, well, let's say the Bosphorus is an example, right? The fillers in the Bosphorus are all Nicaraguan from Esteli, Jalapa, and Omotepe. Now, amazingly, a lot of people, they know what Omotepe is. No one knew what those were, and no one knew what kind of flavor profiles or characteristics they tend to give to a cigar blend.
Exactly.
They do now, which is great. I mean, at this great smoke event that we did, there were people that they were asking me, what's the blend composition? And I told them, then they would tell to their buddies, oh yeah, Omotepe, if you don't know it, is this volcanic island in Nicaragua. And so, that never happened ever before.
Yeah,
so
and I think
interesting.
I think when you have an engaged consumer, you have a loyal consumer as well. Because it builds that brand loyalty, I guess, or loyalty where you're like, all right, cool. I love this brand because they give me everything that I want to know about the cigar and they make cigars that I really like. And I really love Tim and his story. And I really like the direction that we're heading. And it's exciting to be a part of being able to share those stories. Especially a story like yourself with such a long legacy in the cigar industry. And to be able to come back with two amazing releases, and it just makes exciting for the future and be able to follow along with your journey back in the cigar industry and keeps it on the radar and everything like that.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's really kind of about, I wasn't interested in getting back into the cigar business unless we made I think that you start, and again, I just learned this from just being in the business, I tried to calculate how many years directly or indirectly I was in the business. It was like 40 years. You know, I'm 52 now. But I mean, I literally grew up like having to work for my dad to earn allowance in the basement of our home. And I think that what you want to start with is you want to start with like, you know, at the core, at the nucleus, it has to be an outstanding product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the cigar has to be excellent, like every time, right? And so if you start there and you have that, then you can kind of grow from there. And then you want to make sure that, therefore, my father always taught me that, like, if you said, you know, you have a steak restaurant and you say we have the best steak, but you go in there and the steak, the juices from the steak are running and they are hitting the baked potato. Does it look like the best steak? No. Because the presentation is, what do you call it? Mediocre, you know?
Yeah.
So you want to also make sure that, like, therefore, like, if you feel like your cigar, in this case, is the best, you want to package it and present it in a way that belies that, you know? So that's why even at CAO, we try to make, you know, when we built that brand in cigars, if the featured tobacco was Brazilian, we wanted to make the packaging look Brazilian, you know, therefore the Brasilia packaging.
Yep.
You know, so that was kind of, you know, we always believe that that's the next step. And then after that, you can, you know, we said, let's just be more grassroots about it and do more in-store events before we go on like a you know, ad campaign or anything like that, rather than doing things in reverse, because we don't want this to be a gimmick. It's not a gimmick.
Yeah.
It starts from, you know, really it kind of starts from the heart, from what is authentic and who are you? You know, it's sort of like I read this book by Simon Sinek called Start with, you know, Why. Start with the why. Why are you doing this? You know, and for me, why am I getting back into the cigar business, right? Because people would ask that logically. And the reason is that I love the product and how it tastes and everything that goes behind it. And I love how it makes people feel, right? And when we discussed this earlier,
yeah,
I think it's very important. I think cigars are underrated in how they bring people together. Because my father would also say, I mean, I keep mentioning him, obviously he was a big influence on me, is that when you're smoking a cigar, you're automatically slowing down your breathing. It becomes a bit more of a meditative process. You know, like you're not obviously inhaling it into your lungs, but you're drawing it back, you're savoring the flavor, you're blowing it out. So immediately, physically, you're calming down. But at the same time, you know, you have tobacco, even though, you know, I like to say, when you're talking about the soil and the nutrients of the soil going through the vine into the leaf, then you take the leaf, you want to age it so that a lot of the chlorophyll dissipates, it starts changing color, and then you ferment it more. Why? So that you can get to the max potential flavor that each leaf should yield. I'm not a huge fan of, let's retard that process and make it more nicotine content, because if I want more nicotine, I'm smoking a cigarette, which I don't smoke. I'm more interested in, like, what's the overall flavor that you're getting from the cigar onto your palate. So but you still have a little bit of nicotine. So you're getting a little bit of nicotine from the size of your palate. And what does that do? It actually makes you a bit more alert. So the dichotomy between those two, it's interesting, is that you're relaxing, yet you're becoming more alert. So that actually puts you in a really good mode for actually connecting with people, because you can be relaxed, your stress level is down, and it makes you more attentive.
Yeah, you're present in the moment.
Thus a good listener. And so I feel like cigars are underrated in that way.
Yeah, I know cigars for me.
Really interesting when you say it that way. I'm like slowing down my breathing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it evolves. You have to be present in the moment, and I think that opens up, like you said yourself, to be relaxing. You're aware, so you're listening more, active listening. And I know for me, especially during 2020 and 2021, cigars were certainly my therapy. Stressful day or stressful week or whatever it may be, uncertainty in the world at the time, you know, coming outside and sitting down and just relaxing and having a cigar.
Yes.
And we certainly saw other people doing it as well. I think we had a huge boom and over the COVID time for, you know, things like cigars where it's a at-home enjoyment and you don't have to go anywhere. And it was great to have that vice or have that available to me to be able to just kind of separate and take that time for yourself.
Yeah. I have a friend who's he's a very accomplished novelist. He lives in Nashville. Actually, I mean, he's John Meacham. He's written like biographies for like, Jefferson and what are the ones that he's written? Andrew Jackson and George H.W. Bush recently, and he's working on one for Lincoln, I believe.
Oh, cool.
He doesn't drink. He doesn't drink. His vice is cigars. So I asked him, I said, do you smoke cigars as a stimulant for you? And actually he said, no, he smokes them as kind of a reward for him. So if he finishes a chapter, then he'll step outside and smoke a cigar where he's writing.
Yeah. And
smoke a cigar, then go back and write. So I would argue that if that's the case, it is still a stimulant. But, but I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something Pugh and I talk a lot about of where's your spot, right? Front porch, back porch, hot tub, on the mountain, in the cabin, in your man shed. And it seems like everyone kind of has a different spot. There's some nights that I love going out on my front porch, turn off the lights, and we're behind some bushes so no one can really see us if someone comes up. And that's like, it's awesome. Quiet,
sleep sometimes,
peaceful, nothing going on, dead silence. And then you can really focus on the cigar. And, I love doing that with a new cigar because then I can really focus on what it is I'm actually smoking versus being in conversation with someone. I'm smoking the cigar, sure, but I'm more interested probably in the conversation that we're having. So I'm not focusing too much on the cigar, if that makes sense. So it's interesting to hear that that's his outlet after each chapter.
Yeah, reward almost.
Yeah.
I'd be pushing through chapters just to get a cigar in.
Well, it also depends on, I think I also find I'm not a very good golfer. I like going out there and hacking around and just an excuse to be outside with some friends and stuff.
Yeah.
But I noticed that even out there, if I'm smoking a cigar, some cigars that I might enjoy a lot inside will translate differently when I'm in that circumstance. And there are all these other variables what is it? Is it hot? Is it colder? What's your body temperature?
Mm-hmm.
What's the, what I mean? So I find that to be interesting. Okay, like the cigar that I just showed you, this 4x50, I mean, I've smoked that outside and I was like, this tastes a lot differently right now in the circumstance that I'm in as opposed to when I smoked it, at the PCA inside,
Yeah.
So I find that nuance interesting too. It's, you can have a different cigar for a different kind of scenario.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, going even further than that, of how a moment can really make a cigar. I mean, there's so many. When I think of cigars, a lot of time it's a moment that's associated with that cigar that elevates it to be maybe even greater than the sum of its parts because of that moment. And maybe if you smoke it in a different place or location or moment in time, the cigar itself will be completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, your mood can even affect it, or the time of the year, as you were saying, whether it's hot or cold out. There's so many factors that can go into it. And so whenever I smoke a cigar, if I smoke a cigar and I'm like, this really isn't for me, I'm always going to be trying it again because maybe at that moment in time that I smoked it, it wasn't for me. And there's been so many cigars that Griff and I have smoked that maybe one of us didn't like it, and we peer pressure each other to go back and re-smoke it. And we'll go back and smoke it in just a different place. And, a lot of the times our initial feelings will be completely different. And, that cigar is so much better than we remembered.
Yeah, but it's like, Griff, what you said at the beginning. I mean, you're drinking were you drinking Dr. Pepper or
Diet Dr. Pepper?
Diet Dr. Pepper.
Calories.
Yeah, with a cigar. So it's interesting. I've got a 17-year-old son. So for the first, and he's very interested in this business, funny enough. And so he wanted to help us at the booth for this great smoke event that just happened this weekend. So I brought him to help us. So it was his first time
That's awesome.
working a consumer event like this. I mean, he was actually at the PCA putting together samples in Ziploc bags for all of our customers.
Oh, that's cool.
I told him, I said, I want you to be in the background, and you're not going to say anything except yes, sir, and put the cigars in a Ziploc bag as the salesman instructs you. And this one was a different dynamic. You know, we were cutting and lighting every single person's cigar because, you know, we want people to get a sense of this blend.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to teach them how to like jar a cigar and light a cigar. Most of the cigar consumers, that's the other thing I missed, is that those cigar consumers are really cool. You know what I mean? So they're like, they're patient. They're like, okay, I know you're teaching them. Okay, go ahead. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you know, he's like, Dad, can I smoke a cigar? And I was like, okay. So, I mean, it wasn't his first cigar. His first cigar we smoked at New Year's Eve. I kind of taught him how to smoke a cigar and that kind of thing. But I don't know why I got off on that tangent. But
I want to know. Do you remember what his first cigar was on New Year's?
Yeah. No, it was a Bosphorus B55, which that cigar starts off. It's a 55 ring gauge. You know, 5.5 by 55. So it starts off like really peppery.
Yep.
And then it calms down from that. You know what I mean? So, but again, you know, look, he doesn't know how to do stuff like I might have actually talked to him about retrohaling. Then he actually did it. You know, it's funny when you talk to people about it, how quickly they can pick that up, and also about how like that opens up a whole new. That's like going from, you know, black and white to color in a lot of cases. You know, or going from regular TV to HD. You know, it just adds another kind of dimension to your understanding of the components that are in a cigar. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like him picking up and learning stuff like that is an interesting thing to kind of to see and observe.
That's really cool to have that interest. I imagine as a father and having him take interest in your lifestyle, or not lifestyle, the brand and the business. I imagine that's really cool because I certainly not, cigars aren't for everyone, and so that's a really cool experience for him to be with you and to go to these events. Those are lifetime memories.
And I also think that it's not, you know, when I first started smoking cigars, I didn't really get it or pick up on the nuances right away. You know, it takes, I don't know how many, there's a magic number as to how many cigars it takes for you to smoke until you're like, okay, I'm getting it now, you know? Yeah. And I don't know what that number is. I was trying to think about this the other day because, you know, obviously I'm thinking of him, and I don't know if the number is 5. I don't know what the number is of cigars that you smoke that you're like, oh, wow, okay. I don't know what it was for you guys until you know what I mean? Until you
That's
guys.
Funny enough. I don't know how many cigars it was, but I know the cigar that gave me that light bulb moment. It was the Jericho Hill 12 Honest Men, the Lancero version of it. And that cigar was the first time I had that light bulb moment of, oh, wow, I actually taste this tasting note that other people pick up on. And I think it was clove. And from that moment forward, it was, all right, this tastes more than just burnt leaves or tobacco.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of jumping off point of, okay, now I want to find other cigars that have cream or cinnamon or, you know, any of these flavors. And then you're able to kind of snowball from there and start paying more attention.
I remember now why I got on that, because we were talking about like Griff drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper. And so I started talking to him about at CAO, we got into making a high end. The goal was to make the Godiva flavored cigars. So we created this brand called Flavors by CAO, because at the time people were smoking flavored cigars, but the whole idea there, or what was happening, was let's use cheap tobacco and pour flavored syrup, almost like you go to Starbucks and you see them pouring that, you know, onto the tobacco, because it will mask the fact that it's C quality tobacco, because of the syrupiness of the flavoring. And so I was explaining this to him on the way back from the Great Smoke, you know, that our whole thing was, why not use A quality tobacco and mist high-end tobacco on there, and then it taste more like the Godiva of flavored cigars, because we always kept going back to that as our mantra. But I told him, I said, in between cigars, you have to drink, well, we would eat unsalted saltine crackers and drink something with soda in it, like what Griff is doing now, because the carbonation helps break apart some aspects of your palate, and in some regard cleanse your palate so that you're ready for the next blend you need to evaluate.
Yeah, my go-to is unsalted peanuts, and I usually do like some sparkling water or carbonated water as you know, just a neutral palate cleanser. I know the wine world does salted pretzels or just pretzels as one of their palate cleansers.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially as we're doing smoking through test blends or trying to work through upcoming projects, or just, even if it's a new cigar, like Griff was saying, that he's going to sit down and really want to focus on, I'll keep those on hand just to keep my palate fresh throughout smoking that blend, or if we're doing multiple blends back to back to back in a blending session.
But it also does go to the, when you talked about, you could taste like certain aspects, like you mentioned, clove flavor in a cigar that, a lot of times, depending on what you're pairing it with, can also kind of enhance some flavors that you taste from cigars.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if you're smoking a cigar, you feel like the need to be drinking something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it can get too drying of an effect in your mouth. So you're almost always drinking something, even if it's just water. You know what I mean? With cigars. So those people ask also, like, what do you like to pair things with? Do you believe in pairings? And I find that like some pairings can definitely be great with cigars. Bourbon, for example, goes very well with cigars because of the kind of sweet nature that most bourbons have.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we do our fair share of pairings, and we did an episode on palate cleansers, and I found out that roast beef was a great one, straight from the plastic bag off, the Hillshire Farms or whatever it was. And there's some crazy stuff out there.
Yeah. Something about the iron minerality content of the roast beef and beef jerky as well, like surprisingly neutral, and you didn't taste anything after that, and we're really opening up for the next cigars.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, I remember the two most unusual tastings I ever did was one time I did a vodka and cigar pairing. It was at a store called Faders in Baltimore, which they at the time that I was growing up, they had like multiple locations. They were a big fish, and I did one there. And then I remember I did one in Paris at a very old store, near the Louvre off the Rue Honoré there. That was a champagne and cigar pairing.
Interesting.
Which you wouldn't think that would be the best pairing. It was an unusual pairing for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that would be my top choice, to be honest with you, but
yeah, I feel like champagne's too delicate to have with a cigar.
Champagne would be better than milk, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I didn't think about it in that way. At least the champagne has some carbonation.
Yeah. Vodka, we don't hear, or we have not, and I will not probably do a vodka lineup of perfect pairings for that. But
yeah, the funny thing I learned about the vodka one that it stayed with me is that the highest quality vodka you want it to taste as neutral as possible.
Yeah,
which was kind of, I didn't know that at that time. Now I know that since that pairing experience.
Tequila was our latest, and a lot of tequila works phenomenal.
Yeah, that's been definitely eye opening. Gin and vodka and tequila were originally like foreign pairing concepts, and tequila's been marked off that list. Gin and vodka tend to be a little bit more difficult to pair with a cigar. They're both, I think, just too delicate or too neutral.
Yeah, I guess it depends on like what you are, if they're straight up or if you're going to be using them to create a cocktail out of. Because those two spirits tend to do really well in a cocktail version.
Yeah.
So maybe that might be better. I mean, tequilas for sure, because you have like some of these aged tequilas are really they're almost like an aged rum or an aged bourbon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tim, I know yourself. I want to talk about and let you talk about a little bit. You recently just started a podcast yourself. You and John with the Ozheads podcast, where you guys talk about cigars, business, life, and beyond. What made you two want to start a podcast, and how has that been for you?
Well, I mean, John and I go way back. We have this really kind of easy, natural kind of rapport with one another. We have different personalities, but we get along. So it was sort of like, and we like communicating with people. I mean, John really likes communicating with consumers, via kind of social media platforms, and has always been, really good at that. I've always been accustomed to, I like going and doing at events and being able to connect with people there, like live and in person. So we thought that since we both like doing that it might be an interesting medium to try to, I don't know, to try to explore.
Yeah.
So it's something that we're kind of, just sort of like having fun with right now. I mean, it's just see
That's
where
what it's all about. If you're not having fun with it,
goes.
You got to. That's the whole point of a podcast to me, is to have fun and just to have those conversations. And, I look at a podcast and what Griff and I do and what other cigar club or cigar podcasts do. It's bringing that lounge environment to your home or to your ride into work every day, whatever it may be or wherever it may be. They need to, lay back, relax, have fun with it, and enjoy smoking cigars, talking about the hobby and lifestyle that we all love. Where can people find you to listen to the Ozheads podcast? You guys, Spotify, YouTube, where are all those places? It's
on YouTube, so they can go to they can search Ozheads on YouTube to find it. Both he and I are more active on Instagram right now. So if you go to at Oz Family Cigars on Instagram, or my personal one at Tim Ozgener, and certainly or at Crowned Heads, and also we have an Ozheads page on Instagram that we just started too. That those are kind of good places to go to kind of find out when we're doing a new one and this kind of thing.
Excellent.
We're on a cadence now. We try to do one every 2 weeks.
Okay, wonderful.
So it's just go ahead.
No, I was going to say, before we wrap up, we always have a question of the show, and I'd love to throw it to you today. These are people comment on our YouTube or Instagram, TikTok, wherever we are. So today's question comes from John Rukazaz. I butchered that one. And he says, Bic changes the flavor of the smoke. Cedar spills are the way to go. Griff, I know you're getting off of using a Bic just because the soft flame's been killing you.
Changes the flavor of the smoke, meaning cigar.
Yeah. I don't ever. I'd rather use a cedar spill.
I'm still using, so.
I'd rather use a cedar spill than a match, because a match just tends to be more effort than it's worth. But I don't ever really use a cedar spill. Tim, do you have a preference on how you light your cigars? Do you have a Bic versus butane or a torch lighter type of opinion?
I mean, honestly, I travel so much and I've had so many lighters taken from me that I get frustrated with that. And because sometimes it'll pass through TSA and sometimes they'll confiscate it with the butane. I tend to like butane because it lights it so quickly, and it's also windproof. Mm-hmm. But I'll tend to go with whatever I can grab my hands on that will actually
not too picky
last and light the cigar. If I really wanted to be picky about it, I suppose the cedar sheets that you light is nice because it gives that cedar aroma. So that's good. But I mean, I tend to do butane just because of how I like to. When I was showing my son this past weekend, the thing about butane, though, I will say that I get nervous about is, when you're at a big consumer event where you have hundreds, if not thousands of people that come to it, and you want to toast the end of the cigar so that it's smoldering, and then you have a smoke from it, and then you light it. Sometimes it can be difficult to gauge the heat level and how long that flame goes, because you don't want to burn the consumer's fingers or, God forbid, their face.
Yes.
Well, that's my only caveat with the butane is that, not, as you guys know, not all the lighters, it depends on the setting that you have it on. So that's the only thing with butane that I get nervous about the butane lighters is you really got to get used to the, how big of a flame is it? And the other thing about it is that some of them, they might have a spectacular flame, but it may run out of butane rather quickly. Yep. So that's the other thing. But I mean, for years, we used these Jeep lighters internally because they were not butane. They were the regular flames just because they lasted a long, long, long time before you had to refill them. Mm-hmm. And they were always reliable. But you bring it outside and, that can be a pain to light. So that's the only thing. I wish that there was a way that the butane lighters could have a flame that was a more visible flame.
Yeah. Especially during the day. I love lighting a cigar at night because I can see my flame. I can walk it to my cigar and know, cool, this is the perfect point, and see it get toasted. Sometimes it can be, especially during the summer, a lot more difficult. So I always keep my butane lighter on the lowest possible setting.
Yeah.
That will give me a consistent flame. So I'm never, I'm less worried about overheating a cigar. I've given a butane lighter to a cigarette smoker and didn't think twice about it. And he goes and lights the cigarette and he takes off part of his mustache. And I was like, sorry about that, butt stuff.
Some of them are like flamethrowers. I got one of the tabletop we have is like a flamethrower, and I'm like, yeah, that's a little much. I need to dial this thing.
And also like the fact that we started off with pipes, you know what I mean? Like if you have pipes and you have a regular lighter, like a Bic, and you turn it down, that flame will go up and burn
the hell out of your thumb. Yeah.
And then even if you have a butane, the butane could char actually the edges of the pipe too.
Yep.
So there was a lighter my dad used that was almost like, it looked like a pen, and you would strike it on one side and the flame would appear, a flame like a Bic, on the other side. And you would, and that made a lot of sense, right? Because your fingers are far away from where the actual flame is. So it's for sure, like it's a nuanced thing. Like John Huber, he uses a Bic like Griff is using. And I think that he uses a Bic just because, you know, he doesn't have to refill it all the time.
Yeah.
Honest. So, and it's reliable, and you don't, you know, so I guess it's to each his own at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't think for me
on smaller engages it's great. If it's not windy, obviously it's great, but I tend to still use this. I'll use these single flame torch like for 46 or 48 because they're smaller, and then I'll finish it off with the Bic. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's whatever I can find. I lose these things left and right, so I get colorful colors bright colors to find them. But,
and I mean, you know, I had a really nice butane lighter that I got from a retailer here in Nashville. I totally forgot that I had it in my my backpack that I travel with.
Yeah.
And it had made it through TSA, God knows how many places. And then, of course, one of them, they found it. They searched through my bag. It took like literally 15 minutes at security. And at first I thought he saw like, I don't know, a nail clipper or something. But it ended up being like a lighter like this. No, it wasn't a lighter. It was a higher end lighter than this that they ended up throwing away. So, right? That's kind of like,
he
what
took
a bummer.
Sucks.
I hope he took it home.
That's what you got to tell yourself. Someone's at least enjoying it. It's not in a landfill somewhere.
What happens at all these things? Do they look through them at the end of the day saying, I'm going to use this?
They're lost in found pile that they just keep for themselves.
I think that they do, actually.
Better than going to the trash.
There was a guy that was on the news like recently that he took a flight from I don't know where to New Orleans, or maybe he was leaving from New Orleans, and he left his some sort of fanny pack the guy had, you know, which he shouldn't have. Fanny packs I thought were not, people weren't using. But this guy,
they're back.
He left it at the counter, and then they actually have video. You can access video, and he saw that the woman that was working the counter actually opened his fanny pack and like looked through and took stuff from his fanny pack and threw the rest of it away at the airport.
Gosh.
Yeah, at a check-in counter.
Yeesh.
So, yeah.
Oh, man.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's wild. Well, Griff, let's do a giveaway here before we wrap up. I want to give away a 5-pack of the Bosphorus Corona Gorda or Corona Extra cigar here. You got a question off the top of your head, Griff? Or Tim, do you have a question?
Oh,
I
don't. Not to put either of you on the spot.
Tim, any question come to mind that the viewers can leave in the comments after the episode? It can be anything. It could be
literally your favorite color for all week. It could be as crazy or easy as that, or
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a cigar related question.
No, not at all.
But it can be.
It can be. And if you don't have one, I can come up with one. So no worries. We like to throw these on the spot. It makes it more interesting.
Let me think.
And we can cut out any of this.
So I mean, I will say this. It goes back to kind of like the. It goes back to this. The Statue of Liberty was given by a gift from whom?
Ooh, great question. So in the comments below, let us know who gifted Do you want the person? I don't want to give too much away. Do you want the person, or maybe you see what I'm alluding to there?
Yeah, I know. I think it's pretty broad. I think it's
Okay.
it can be like, it was gifted by whom or by what entity, and
Okay.
I don't know if you want to say and why, but I mean,
Hey, the more detail you give, the
It's
better.
Mitch
So let us know
Lessons.
in the comments below who gifted the Statue of Liberty, and we will pick a winner from the comments below and send you a 5-pack of the Bosphorus exclusive. But Tim, thank you again for your time and joining us. We really look forward to what's going to be in store for 2023. Hopefully we'll see you at PCA this year in Vegas. But one last time, where can everyone find you on social media, and let them know?
They can go to @OzFamilyCigars on social media, or @TimOzgener on Instagram. Both of them.
Well, until next time, everyone, happy smoking.
Cheers.
Yeah.